Welcome to Influential Entrepreneurs, bringing you interviews with elite business leaders and experts, sharing tips and strategies for elevating your business to the next level. Here's your host, Mike Saunders.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Influential Entrepreneurs. This is Mike Saunders, the Authority Positioning Coach. Today we have back with us Taliya Bashani, who's a real estate attorney, negotiation expert, and founder of the Tab Law Firm, and we'll be talking about winning the listing presentation. Taliya, welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much, Mike. Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Hey, you're welcome. So I love that we've been talking through your process, your strategy, your blueprint for success to win the actual listing. But now we're at the point of winning the listing presentation, because at some point you've gotten to know the seller, you've done your research, and now you need to go and present. So what's the first step that you recommend in being ready and prepared for that listing presentation?
Sure. So after, doing all of the necessary research, gathering all of the data, everything that we spoke about before, once you get to the listing appointment, it's important to have your PowerPoint or Google Docs, presentation professionally prepared with all of your data, all of your photos, and emphasizing your team and obviously your enthusiasm. So I also suggest to my agents that it's really important that if you're going to be displaying your presentation on your laptop and doing a digital format, including, as we mentioned, a photo of the property on page 1. So it looks very customized and tailored for the seller, not just a cookie cutter, off-brand type of presentation, but definitely tailored with that photo of the subject property or the condo building on page 1. I always suggest that the broker also bring in a hard copy to leave with the seller, just in case the seller wants to refer back to it. Obviously, the goal at the end of the presentation is to get the seller to sign and execute the listing agreement right there and then. But just as a backup, even while you're presenting, sometimes the seller would like a hard copy. So I suggest that be professionally printed, colored, nice paper, professionally bound, and left with the listing agent, or left with the seller with the listing agent's contact info and all of that information, business card.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because different people prefer, I've got a 21-year-old daughter who's an English major, and she loves reading paper books, not Kindles, not digital. So everyone is different. And so one thing that I would wonder is, when you go to that listing presentation, you have that really professionally printed, maybe bound really professionally, so it's ready for them, but you do want to show maybe some of that technology. What do you recommend regarding contingencies? What if their Wi-Fi is down? So do you want to have it where you have online access, but you need to have a hotspot? So what about contingencies and technology?
Yeah, so good question. So absolutely, I would say make sure the presentation itself, whether it be the Google Docs or the PowerPoint presentation, be saved on an external hard drive or thumb drive that you could easily just plug into your laptop, and that way you don't need any Wi-Fi. Or if you have to, let's say, show them something online or want to take them directly to MLS as proof, or if they have follow-up questions, then a lot of people these days have hotspots on their cell phone, so they can turn on the hotspot on their cell phone and connect to the Wi-Fi through their cell as a backup. So it's just important to be prepared, as you mentioned, for any necessary contingencies that come up. And of course, that hard copy that you're going to bring as well is going to be very important for those purposes.
And how long do you recommend the listing presentation portion to be? Because if you think about PowerPoint slides, you could do, 50 or 60 slides, and at some point you might feel like you're droning on and on. So is there a preferred time frame?
I would say no longer than really 20 to 30 minutes. You don't have to overpower it by any means. I think getting right to the point and having a very convincing presentation and showing that you're prepared and you can run through it quickly, I think is important. Of course, this is after you've already done your research and you've asked the questions to the seller and found out what their motivations are and the timeline and things like that. So I think 20 or 30 minutes tops. And then at the end, you can leave room for discussion or question and answers or any follow-ups that the seller may have for you.
Yep, that's a really good point. And like, sense the room. So if you feel like they're fidgety or you could speed up your presentation and maybe get right to the point. And I think that's going to be something that just becomes with experience.
Yes, absolutely. And it'll get more fluid, as the agents go through it, they'll be more fluid with it and they'll know what to expect because they'll have just that experience and knowledge from prior appointments.
So you mentioned the word enthusiasm, which I know that is super important. Talk a little bit about the balance between enthusiasm and being too over the top, because you want someone very interested in winning the listing and showing your enthusiasm, but all of a sudden, there could be a point where it's like, okay, we need to be calm and confident and not be over the top.
Yeah. So I think it's one thing, you don't want to, fake it. So if you're generally passionate about the property, committed to the listing, and you believe in the property and believe in yourself that you can get it sold, then that's really what is going to drive it home. It's one thing to be complimentary and say, oh, I love what you've done with the place and things like that, but it should be natural and organic. You don't have to come in there with your pom-poms as a cheerleader doing backflips,
Right.
So it's just kind of important to, maintain that level and just truly believe in it. And again, this is going to come from confidence, in the agent, in themselves and in their company and in their team, and knowing that they can get it done. So if they just stay passionate and true to themselves and true to the seller, then that's going to be conveyed throughout the presentation.
So during the research process, you've done a whole lot of research about that specific property with market data, things like that. Talk a little bit about the market data that now needs to be put into the presentation. What's the balance there? If the presentation is 20 minutes long, as an example, how much of that needs to be, kind of in the weeds of market data?
Yeah, good question. So I always recommend 2 slides. So 2 slides of the presentation be dedicated to market data. The first slide should be some sort of graph showing the history of sales or of closings within the last 6 months to a year for comparable properties. So that at least sets the benchmark and gives the seller an idea of what has sold in the past, similar to the subject property. That should be the first slide. The second slide should be what is on the market now? What is your competition? So again, remember, you've already completed, your detective work. You've already scoured the market for the other listings to see what other units or properties in the same area compared to this subject property are listed for. So that slide should really show, okay, this is what we have. We have a unit 5C, we have 123 Main Street, we have XYZ. All of these are very comparable. This is what's different from your unit. This is what's, better or worse than your property. And therefore, I think your property falls in this median. So that using that technical data really is going to help kind of drive the price and show the seller, these are the facts, this is what I recommend. Now let's talk and negotiate price. So
because when you bring up a price, they might have had a different price in their head, but if you use that succinct market data, that establishes your point of why that price point would be optimal.
Exactly. And I always say the first rule of negotiation is always have the seller go first relative to, okay, what number do you have in your head? What is your ideal price point? Because if you have the seller deliver it first, it avoids 2 things. One, if you come in too low, you might offend the seller. In such case that if you're like, well, I thought, I'm thinking $1 million for this property, the seller's thinking, well, I was thinking 1.250, so now you've just kind of offended them. You think their property is, $250,000 less than what they have in their mind. So you always want the seller to go first. The other thing is maybe the seller has a certain price point that they're comfortable with, and maybe you thought 1.5. Now you're over delivering and, are over promising and under delivering. So it's really important to know what the seller's number is first and then work from there. I always say it's nice to find a happy medium. If the seller's at 1.250 and you're at $1 million, maybe say, look, I really think we can get it sold quickly at $1 million, but I understand that you have a particular number in your mind. Therefore, I say maybe we meet in the middle, we split the difference, and let's see what the market generates for us. And depending on the amount of interest and the amount of feedback, after 30 or 60 days, at that point, the agent knows that maybe if they have to revisit a price reduction, they can do so at that point. But the main goal is to really win the listing, to get that seller to sign. So you want to be pleasers, you want to work with the seller, and you want to be accommodating. Of course, you want to keep it realistic and reasonable in today's market as well, and say, hey, seller, trust me, I know that this property is probably worth every penny and the value of, $1.25 million. This is what the market is dictating, but I'm going to do my best, to fight for you and, to get the price that you want. But let's be more reasonable and come in at, 1.125, something like that, just so that happy medium is the smart move.
So let's talk through kind of a case study example here that I'm thinking of. Let's say that through your research, you realize that they need to sell in a certain time frame, and it's comfortable, it's not too fast. And you also notice going through the property that there's some opportunity for some updates, repairs, renovations, not major, but just some things that could be done if you invest a little bit of money and time that could really open up the listing price. Well, at what point do you bring that up in the presentation? Like, as an example, in the gap that you mentioned there, they want 1.25, you think 1 million. Would you then say, hey, to get to that 1.25, maybe what we should do is look at some of these enhancements that's going to add maybe 2 to 3 weeks in the time frame here? What would you say the process is regarding bringing up maybe some repairs or enhancements?
Yeah, so I would say maybe at the end of the presentation, you and the seller can do a walkthrough together through the property, just to get kind of a thorough. And then after the end, you present your ideas and essentially say, look, I have a team. I think it'll show a lot better. We can fix some of the water stains on the ceiling. I can bring in my contractor to spackle and paint. Maybe it would be best for us to reorganize the garage, or I have a stager that can come in and just bring in some plants and some flowers and, just kind of spruce it up a bit. But, little tweaks that the agent feels will really get the property to shine and showcase at its best value. But remember, everything that you say to the seller has to be treated very delicately, because you don't want to be too aggressive or offensive. So all of those suggestions, the main thing is, and look, if you don't have time to do it, seller, I'm happy to bring in somebody. I have a guy that can do it, $200. He'll get it done for you. You don't have to worry about it or break your back over it, and we can fix things up.
So exactly. And it's all learning the nuances of dealing with and communicating with the seller. So once you've kind of established that, how do you describe the marketing tools that you will be implementing to get their listing sold quickly?
Yeah, so I think it'd be great, depending on what company and what brokerage the listing agent is working for. I think it would be really wonderful to show them examples. Hey, this was a prior, marketing blast that I did, or graphic design, or flyers, or social media posts that I did for other properties. This is what I'd like to do for yours, and maybe have examples so that they see their property, in the same type of format. And also say, look, we have an app across our entire brokerage. We do a lot of, we share listings. There's a lot of agents that this will get in front of to bring in buyers. We also use third-party marketing vehicles. I'd love to bring in my professional photographers and videographers and do virtual tours and, pitch the property to out-of-state sellers. This would be great for investors. Whatever the agent really thinks will drive the property and get the most exposure, they should really hone in on that for the seller, because that's what the seller wants to hear. They want to know that the agent is going to be actively marketing their property and using all, means necessary across all platforms.
So what advanced marketing tools have you seen that really help the property stand out? Because maybe this seller has talked to another agent because, you're not the only one they're going to talk to, and they've heard maybe the standard pitch. What are some of those advanced things that would make your pitch stand out as far as advanced marketing?
Well, I think, again, the graphic designer, artist renderings, having the floor plans, having drone. Not every agent knows how to use drone or, where to access it. So having drone, I think, will set them apart as well, because that will give you an aerial view of the property and the neighborhood and the area. So a lot of buyers like to look at that. And the virtual tours are huge. Those virtual video tours that people can see right there in the listing really go a long way. And if you have a professional videographer and maybe you're doing a reel or something for Instagram or TikTok that shows you walking through the property and showcasing the beautiful high ceilings and the great sunlight, anything that will really stand out, I think the agent should let them know, this is what has worked for me before. This, I think, would be perfect for your property. And I'm willing to use all vehicles in order to showcase your property in the best light.
Yeah. When you look at some of the things that are available in print and digital, there is easy opportunity to take that house, some of the, images that you already have before the presentation, insert that into some of the marketing and come in showing these marketing things already created. It'd be harder to do virtual tours and drones, but do you recommend having some of that customization done up front?
Yes, for sure. I mean, you don't want to put too much time and resources into it, because you really want to nail the listing before you start, exercising all of your resources for the marketing. But I think examples of, what you can do, and that you can be very creative with it, taking a picture of the property, showing advertisements and marketing material and flyers just with page one, with the, photo of the property that you have. Can really go a long way. And then just show examples. Hey, this is another property that we did, and this is what I'd like to do for yours with the interior of the unit, or, with the pool, or with the building as a whole. So I think examples of prior listings that have worked on top of using the photo or what you do have, because remember, sometimes with properties that have been listed before and have now expired, you cannot use other agents' photos. So that is infringement, and it's illegal and violates, the terms of practice. So I don't want an agent taking photos from expired or old listings from MLS or Street Easy or whatever it may be. So it's really important that, unless there's stock photos that the building already has, like if it's a condo, that's fine. You can use the stock photos that the building has online, but no prior photos from, prior listings.
Yes, good point. So I know that when you get to the stage of, hey, let's pick, here's the contract you need. We're going to set this for a term of however long that you're going to engage my services. Talk about the balance between the term that you want, which typically you want as long as possible to give you runway to work with, and the speed that you feel that you can get the house sold, because you might be saying, oh, we can get this sold in 2 to 3 months. But then what if you're talking about engaging your services on a 6-month term? Then there could be a disconnect. So how does that come together congruently?
Yeah. So very important, first and foremost, if you're going to take this listing, you want to make sure absolutely that you close the deal. Therefore, a 6-month listing term is very important. 6 months with the option to renew. So a lot of sellers, might not sign a 1-year listing right away because they think that maybe the agent is not going to be as aggressive or assertive in marketing it in the beginning if they have a whole year to sell it. So a lot of times the happy medium is 6-month term for the listing with an option to renew. Because again, you don't know what kind of activity is going to happen. Nobody knows, what the how many impressions are really going to come in. So 6 months is the absolute minimum. Then, depending on the property itself, maybe it just needs a few tweaks, and then you can turn it around within 2 weeks for it to go live. But remember, you have to bring in your photographer, you have to bring in your videographer, you have to get all your graphic design work done. So all of that is really important to make sure that you have your team and everything necessary and ready to go.
Yeah. And you always want to have that happy medium of under promising and over delivering. But if you under promise too much, then they don't feel like you're going to be doing much for them.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So, and again, depending on the property itself, whether or not, it needs contractors or it needs to be fixed up or whatever it may be, that really kind of goes a long way.
Yep.
So,
well, speaking of contractors, and talk a little bit about showcasing the team, because you're the coach or the quarterback, if you want to think of it, but then you've got a team of people like contractors or lenders or, whoever else, the attorneys and lawyers and title companies. Talk about how you present that to the seller so that they feel like you're bringing that team along with to help them out.
Yeah, so I would say just one PowerPoint page in the presentation can really list, these are my people, this is my team, this is who I work with, these are all the resources that I can tap into, and I have them all ready, lined up to start working on this property right away, turning around all the necessary, resources and marketing material that we need. I can bring them in next week. Let's get this room painted. Let's get this room staged. And I can have this listing live for you in a matter of, 2 or 3 weeks. So if you really let them show that you're ready to hit the ground running, that's going to go a long way for the seller because they know that you're going to take this on, make it a priority, and really move quickly.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And at any point, at every point of a presentation, you got to come to the close and ask for the business. And then it comes down to price. If you're selling a widget, how much is it? In this case, it's like, what's the commission structure? So talk a little bit about when that comes up, because there is going to be the seller that wants to beat you down to the lowest price, but then the lowest price might not bring the best deliverable. So how do you handle the conversation about commission?
Yeah, so very important. So I would always say, do not sell yourself short. The only 6% is the standard across the board. Obviously, if it's a multi-million-dollar luxury property and you're selling something for 25 million, you can go down to maybe 5%. Also, you want to let the seller know that this could be a co-broke, meaning we're going to market this property to every other agent out there, as well as direct clients and direct buyers. But if an agent brings in their own buyer, the commission gets split 50-50 between both parties. So a lot of agents, if you list the co-broke too low, are not even going to bother bringing their buyer. So we don't want to be in a situation where the commission structure is only 4% or 5% and a co-broke, because really no buyer's agent is going to want to accept less than 3% off the bat. I have seen it sometimes get negotiated when it comes down to price or things like that. But you don't want to underestimate your value. You want to let them know that you're worth it and that you are earning every percentage of that commission. But what you could say is, if I do find a direct buyer, either through open houses or whatever it may be, I would be happy to reduce my commission by 5%, so that it saves you 1 point on the deal. And then the listing agent becomes a dual agent and collects a full 5% instead of co-broking. So really kind of depends on that structure, but at least that is a positive point for the seller.
Yeah. And so now you're to the point where you've come through the entire presentation and you need to close the deal. What are some of the closing tips that you would recommend?
Yeah. So for closing, I would say have your lockbox ready. Have your signs ready if it's a house, your for sale signs with your contact info, and have that listing agreement prepared, printed, ready to go. So all you have to do is fill in the blank regarding the list price and fill in the blank regarding the percentage, the commission percentage, and ask for the order. Don't leave that listing appointment and say, hey, do we have a deal? I'd really like to get started on this for you as soon as possible. I'd love to work together and we can turn this around tomorrow. Here's my listing agreement. Here's the lockbox. Here are my signs. And just ask for the order. Do not walk out, and definitely shake on it. Okay. So you shake on it and then you sign the paperwork, because that handshake goes a long way and is pretty much a meeting of the minds and agreement between the parties. Yeah. So I think it's really important to drive it all the way home. And do we have a deal? Let's get started. I'm ready.
So I know we could do about a 4.5 hour long talk about overcoming objections, but what about the one where you get all the way through, you're ready for the paperwork, you're asking for the deal, and they say, wonderful, we just need to think about it and talk to our whatever. Can you give us a call back tomorrow, or we'll get back to you? What do you say to that?
I would say time kills all deals. The longer we wait and sit on this, the longer it's going to take to get your property sold. What is holding you back? Let me see if I can make you feel better and satisfy, those inhibitions for you. What can I do so we can get this done? Because every day that it's sitting on the market, that it's not sitting on the market, it's costing you money and is another day of you not getting the property sold. So I would just be ready just like that. And to let them know, look, it's costing you money every day. What's holding you back? Let's see if we can work something out. I'm ready. I'm ready to fight for this.
And then they might then go back to, well, you said whatever, or the commission structure is, and then you can go back and deal with that. So that's a really great point. Just kind of bring it right to, sense of urgency, momentum. That's really excellent. And the result should be, let's win that listing. So Taliya, it's been really great just kind of talking through your strategies here on winning that listing presentation. Really powerful ideas. Thank you so much. What's the best way that someone can reach out and connect with you?
Yeah, sure. So they can directly connect with me on my 360 site. That's tali360.com, TALI360.com. They'll have my full contact info, my email, my social media, and I look forward to hearing from everyone.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming back on today, Taliya. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you, Mike. You as well.
You've been listening to Influential Entrepreneurs with Mike Saunders. To learn more about the resources mentioned on today's show or listen to past episodes, visit www.influentialentrepreneursradio.com.